Okay, well, I'm gonna run the map. And I didn't get to see last, but that's okay. I'll put weapon models on. Alright, hi everyone, it's Solomon here, doing a bit of post-commentary. Reason being, having watched over this footage in post-production, I realised that it's extremely boring. Well, a lot of it at least. So I decided that making a voice commentary would spice things up a little bit. So this footage is my run of Jump Squared, which I streamed over at twitch.tv/SolomonN. And the run, fun fact for you, occurred on the 27th of December 2020, so yesterday at the time of this recording. Now, although I just plugged my stream, I wouldn't encourage you to go over there and watch my streams because I wouldn't consider myself a good streamer in the least. My streams are pretty boring. For me, streaming is largely just a convenient way to collect clips if anything interesting happens, like this run of Jump Squared. But for the most part, while running the map, I was just sitting there concentrating in silence. Okay. I do occasionally crack a joke, but it really was necessary for me to make this post-production commentary. So this map, Jump Squared, was far and away the hardest soldier map for many, many years. It's since been overtaken by a few, perhaps like Rick O'Connell, Wolfox, but even to this day it's a very, very hard map, with only 38 completions on Tempus, despite the fact that it's been on the network since 2014. It was one of those maps that was not necessarily considered to be impossible, but just theoretically doable, or so hard that nobody would realistically be able to beat it. So for all you Zoomers who might not know, or who just haven't been following the jump scene, this map was a pretty big deal back in the day. And it's utterly surreal that I am, today, able to beat it. So if you can't tell from the footage, this is predominantly a wall pogo map, which is probably the most degenerate skill in all of TF2 Jump, and likely part of the reason why the map has so few completions. But it's not just wall pogo that makes the map difficult. There are plenty of jumps on the map that are not wall pogo that are still very, very hard. If you're wanting to beat the map yourself, you need to be proficient at C-taps, which are a very useful jumping technique, practical in settings outside of jump, like normal TF2 games, where you tap crouch, and then as you release it, you jump and shoot at the same time. And that gives you a lot more height than a normal rocket jump. You also need to be able to wall shot, which is where you chain rocket jumps from wall to wall. You need to be able to skip, which is where you pogo on the ground, building up speed. You need to be decent at sync jumps, which are rocket jumps where you synchronize 2 or more rockets, giving you more height and speed. And last, but certainly not least, you have to be very, very good at wall pogo. In terms of your wall pogo skill, this map tests you in pretty much every single way. Recovery, single wall, switches, corners, precision, and endurance. For any of you who aren't degenerate wall pogo mains, you may not know what those techniques are, but don't worry, you'll see a demonstration of each of them over the course of this run. So you might be wondering, how do I learn these techniques? How do I get good at TF2 Jump? What do I do? Where do I start? Where do I go? The first thing is, you have to get on the Tempus network. The Tempus network is basically a collection of servers that run jump maps. And what makes Tempus network servers different to, I guess, just normal jump servers is that on Tempus, when you beat maps, you get a time and you're put on a leaderboard. You also get points for beating maps, with more difficult maps delivering you more points. And the more points you have, the higher your rank is. And I find this to be a great incentive to beat ever more difficult maps. The second thing is, once you're on the Tempus network, you should focus on completion. Specifically, you should start with the easiest maps on the network and slowly beat them all, working toward beating harder maps over time. This is really easy to do on Tempus servers because maps are graded by difficulty from tier 1, very easy, to tier 6, or insane. Jump Squared, of course, is a tier 6 map, if that's not apparent just by looking at it. So you'd start with the tier 1 maps, clear them all, move on to tier 2 maps, clear them all, move on to tier 3 maps, etc. So me personally, I've done every single map rated tier 4 and below. I've beaten almost every single tier 5 map, so it's just a couple of tier 5 maps and the rest of my tier 6s to go. But if you're only in it to improve your soldier play, you probably don't have to be much better than like a tier 4 jumper. If you can beat every tier 3 map, and you can beat some significant tier 4 maps, you really don't have to get that much better at jump. You'll get diminishing returns for extra invested time after that point. That is, of course, if we're strictly talking about being good at the actual game outside of jump. Like 6v6, for example. You can use the /incomplete command in the chat to see what maps you have left to beat from tier 1 all the way to tier 6. I think occasional forays into higher difficulty tiers can be beneficial. Say, like, you're somebody who normally does tier 3 maps. I think it can be beneficial to try out a tier 4 or a tier 5 map. But broadly speaking, you don't want to be punching above your weight. I just don't think it's very conducive to improvement. As to why I think completion is pretty much the best way to improve, I can give you an anecdote. So, I remember this player. I'm not going to reveal this player's username, but this player was very low rank and trying to beat Jump Sven, which is a tier 5 map. And this person was not having very much luck at all on the map. And I suggested, hey, why don't you just go /incomplete and beat all of your tier 1 maps and all of your tier 2 maps? And a couple of weeks later, I saw this player again, and there was improvement by leaps and bounds in jumping skill. I think it's also less frustrating for many players to attempt to beat maps that are within their difficulty reach. I know of a lot of competitive players who never really get into jump because they try it out and they're just dumped on some tier 3 map and they get frustrated because they can't beat the level with the sync and they leave. Whereas they'd probably feel a lot more rewarded if they could actually beat maps. And when the Tempus network rates a map as very easy, the people in charge are not lying. It really is very easy when it says it's very easy, so you don't have to worry. I think also another common pitfall is for budding jumpers to play the same map over and over and over again, thinking that they're getting better. While on the leaderboard your time might be improving, which is, I suppose, a form of improvement, it doesn't necessarily mean you're becoming a better jumper. Why? Because when you play the same map or maps over and over and over again, you're building up skills that are specific to the map or maps you're playing. Whereas on the other hand, if you do completion, you're building up a broadly applicable and diverse set of skills, and you can beat anything, any new map throws at you, because you're not just a one-trick pony. So I think rerunning the same maps over and over and over again is a superficial form of improvement. You can do it for fun, of course, but do note that I don't think it's the most efficient way to improve as a jumper. Going for top times and so on is really something that you do when you're an established jumper, a very good jumper, and honestly, I would say you should be within the top 200 at the minimum, if that's your aspiration. And last, I think the third way to improve as a jumper is to watch videos of top jumpers playing. And when I say watch videos of top jumpers playing, I don't mean just watch them passively. Think about what they're doing. Think about their crosshair placement, the timing of their rockets, what movement keys they might be holding, and even try to copy their actions. If you can watch video, Alt-Tab, go back to the game, try out what they're doing, etc. Usually, you can simply join a Tempus server as well, and there will be a very good player on a lot of the time, and you can simply watch them. There's a command you can put in the chat, /s keys, and that'll tell you what keys they're holding down, and when they're holding those keys down. I've found that to be very helpful. If you're wanting to be a better TF2 player, in particular a better soldier or demo man player, jump is really worth improving at. Perhaps not the kind of jumping that I'm doing in this video, that's a bit more esoteric, but there is a lot of merit in becoming a better jumper. It'll improve your fluency, just with the class, the soldier class in general. You'll have a better understanding of how long it takes for a rocket to reach its destination, or what degree of movement you'll have while strafing in mid-air. Really, jumping will improve your soldier play in innumerable ways. Even aim, to an extent, is challenged when you're doing things like telesyncs. Now granted, jumping is not the most specific way to improve at aiming, that's not its purpose, but it's better than nothing, and it's an overlooked side benefit of jumping. The good news of all of this is that I've found that jumping is something you can improve at very quickly, and the improvements are noticeable and highly rewarding, at least to me. So anyway, this jump that I'm currently on is the infamous level 13, the jump squared wall pogo maze. And it's as bad as it sounds. You have to navigate a maze with your only means of doing so being wall pogo. If you make a mistake, like bonking your head, and you touch the ground, you'll be sent all the way back to the start. Back in 2013, a jumper by the username of Aurora beat this wall pogo maze in 15 minutes, and that was considered a very big accomplishment. Today, jumpers like me can beat it much faster than that, because wall pogo tech has improved quite a lot, but it's still very difficult, even to this day. You remember how I was talking a bit earlier about all the ways in which your skills, wall pogo wise, were tested on this map? Well, this is a prime example of a jump that tests your endurance. How long can you do this for? Will you crack? Will you make a single mistake that costs you the entire jump? Does that sound fun to you? Probably not. Well, Tier 6 jump maps might not be for you. But don't worry, not everyone is like this. I think this is a pretty bad map as far as Tier 6 jump maps go. But I think this map takes its badness in its stride. It doesn't pretend to be a fun map or a good map. It's just very hard, and it's grueling, and you're not supposed to like it. But let me tell you, the feeling you get when you beat a difficult map like this, or indeed even just a difficult jump, oh, it's addictive. It's exhilarating. that is what keeps me hooked. In fact, to be perfectly honest, I was a little disappointed at how easy I found this map. I was expecting it to be really, really hard and a big challenge, and I was expecting to feel really good after beating it. Challenged by the map, but happy for having beaten it. And I was disappointed because I really didn't find it that challenging. I mean, for sure it was hard, the hardest map I've ever beaten, but I'm just gonna have to look for other impossible maps to chase that dopamine hit. Or perhaps I should just quit jumping. In fact, I'm almost certain that that would be the more sensible course of action. So, in the chat you'll see that Dilla, who at the time of this recording is I think the rank 12 jumper in the world, from New Zealand. He's, I think, getting a little more anxious than even I am watching me play through the map than I am actually playing it. In the chat you'll have seen that he's been giving me directions in all caps, you know, up, left, right, blah blah blah. He also advised me to put sprays down. Sprays are like a interesting server-side command on Tempus where you can mark certain textures on the map to denote that that particular spot you've marked is in some way special. So I suppose what you do on the maze is you'd have sprays on the bits where you're not supposed to go so that you know which direction to go. But me, I just memorized the map. It's just like left, right, up, first left. That's pretty much what was going on in my head. I did consider putting sprays down before the run, but I decided against it ultimately because it just doesn't look as pretty in the final version, you know? I don't know. I wanted to preserve the purity of the map. I wanted to run it as Aurora ran it back in 2013, only with the original instead of the stock rocket launcher. Sorry. I'm not much of a Gen Z jumper. Yes, I use third person. Yes, I use the original, but I don't use sprays. Mea culpa. And isn't it cruel that the home stretch of the maze, as it were, is also the hardest part of the whole thing? It's just single wall down pogo from the very ceiling of the maze to the very bottom. My heart was racing at 1,000,000 beats a second on this final wall of the maze. But thankfully I did get there in the end. You know, there's an Australian jumper. You know, I'm not going to reveal this individual's name. So the run's over an hour now. Because he might find this a bit embarrassing. But a couple of months back, he was doing his very first run of Jump Squared. And he failed this wall pogo maze on 3 separate attempts. And I was there for some of them. He got like almost to the very bottom of that final wall, and then he choked and fell and went all the way back to the start, and then he immediately just rage quit. And he actually did that on multiple separate occasions. So everything before the wall pogo maze was fine for him, but just not the maze. And, you know, leading up to the run, I was like telling everyone, I'm going to run Jump Squared this weekend. We'll see what happens. And everybody was just telling me their own horror stories about, you know, a friend of theirs who ran the maze, and, you know, it took this person like 30 minutes on a single attempt, or, you know, someone did it for like an hour and 30 minutes because they didn't know where to go. And I'm not going to lie, that intimidated me a little bit, but I'm glad to have been able to do it with relative ease. I imagine that it is the kind of jump that would just frustrate you after like, you know, 3 attempts. So it's either you get it early, as I did, or you never get it at all. Like, it's not one of those ones that you can just keep grinding until you get it. You would have a limit with it, I would imagine. There! I got it, baby! I got it. So you hear conflicting things about what the hardest level of jump squared is. So that one, number 14, that I just did, is considered by some to be the hardest. Others consider the wall pogo maze to be the hardest. And 15 is also considered very hard. That's the one I'm currently on. 15 is hard because of two things, I think. One of those things is that it's long, so there are many opportunities to mess up. And the second thing is that there are these wall switches. Now what I'm doing right at this very moment is not wall switching, even though that's kind of how it looks. No, wall switching refers more to when you make like a giant leap from one wall to another, purely with wall pogo, and it can be very tricky. You'll see another demonstration of it coming up soon. Right now, in fact. Here we go. Giant leap. You'll notice that I keep strafing back into the wall after each rocket. This is a technique called recovery. My understanding of recovery is that if you're going down too quickly, you can save yourself from falling by transferring some of your vertical speed into horizontal speed with those strafes. And I'd say that when you learn how to do recovery, that's like the eureka moment, where from then on, pretty much all wall pogo becomes trivially easy. The thing about recovery, though, is that it only really works if you've got a lot of room left to right. Otherwise, you just can't strafe that much. So you'll see that for this wall, I'm just not risking it. I'm going down very slowly because, as I said, one of the things that makes this jump hard is that it's long. And this is one opportunity where it's easy to get overzealous and screw up. So I'm playing it very safe, and that paid off bigly, as the Donald would say. So coming up is another wall switch. Gratefully, it's not as hard as the previous two, but still chokeable. So I'm being cautious. So this, jump 15, is the second last jump, which means dun dun dun. The last jump is coming up. I think last would be the hardest jump if it weren't cheatable. So you can cheat the last jump on jump squared. What you can do is I think you can like wall shot one of the back walls and then do a telesync, and you do like a triple or a quad, and you can fly all the way to the very end. That's kind of a shame, in my opinion, because I am actually capable of doing the entire thing 100% legit, just wall pogo, but unfortunately there's an out for the commoners who don't main wall pogo, and they can beat the jump with a cheat. So I think that's probably why the map has more completions than it should. So the three people who were spectating me at this point were each scolding me for choosing to do the wall pogo instead of the triple, which was added motivation for me to show them that no, I can do it with just the wall pogo. I don't need any triple sync gimmicks as a crutch. So anyway, I think I'll just let the rest of the footage play out. I know this commentary's been a bit of a mess, it's been a bit shambolic, I do acknowledge that. It's just something I threw together at the last minute, so bear with me. Thank you for watching. Solomon Nelson over and out. Yep. Rank 13 on the map. I beat it, guys!
Good son, real good.
I beat it!
Even the best.
Of the 38 people who beat that map, I came 13th. I'll go down in the annals of wall pogo. I've been indelibly stamped there. That's not bad for my first ever run of this map. So what are the top times on this map? Map run. So obviously Boschi's number 1. Oh damn, I did better than a lot of people. When next? I don't know about that. I'll show you my completed maps, right? So I've got Squared, Shiver, Scorpion, Psycho, Pickles, Muriel 3, Muriel 2, Manifestation, Lion, Edgebug, Carrot. Those are my only tier 6 clears. And Ziggurat, though that is technically tier 5, I believe it should be classified as tier 6. I think I'm the lowest ranked player to have beaten this map. Everyone here is like a top jumper, so that's very cool. I'm rank 111. Actually guys, this is some breaking news. The guy who was originally 12th just got banned for cheating on jump, so now I'm 12th, which is hilarious. So instead of being 13 out of 38, I'm 12 out of 37. There I am on the leaderboards. Very cool.